Hello everyone, I'm Lori Kern with Quilters Headquarters in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Back with our London Blues. Today we are working on block 7. As you already know, I am using a different fabric line. And I actually had a person come into the store the other day and say, I can't wait to see what this quilt looks like with your fabric line. Me neither. I can't wait to see it either. It'd be fun to see. All right, so block 7 is this block right here. Sorry about that glare. There we go. Better. So we will be making an hourglass unit, a square and a square, and then I'm not sure what we call these, the corner units. So we'll start with the hourglass unit today, and we are working on page 7. So right here, so we're going to take our 6-inch squares, 2 of the 4 and 8, fabric 4 and 8, and we will be making our hourglass unit. So then we'll move over to here. So this tool that I will be using today for our hourglass tool, or our hourglass block, is the best tool, I think, for this unit is the Tucker trimmer. And you will see why in a minute. All right, so the first thing that our instructions tell us to do is, using the 6-inch squares and the half square triangle instructions, make a total of 4 half square triangle units. So we're going to use 2 of fabrics 4 and 8, and we will press away from fabric 8, and we will not square it up, not yet. So my fabric 8, this is my fabric 4, so this must be my fabric 8. And we want to pull out 2 of them. That's what I have there, 2 and 2. Well, that's all I have. Use 2 of the 4, 8, yields 4. That would make sense. Okay, so let's get to it. The first thing we're going to do is draw our lines from our sewing lines. I like to draw the sewing lines, although you could use your tape too. This is just a little bit, make sure you can see what I'm talking about. This is a little bit too short for me for a 6-inch square, so I'll just draw my lines. I'm using my Quilter's Magic Wand by Studio 180 and my Bowen pen. It's got white chalk in it. I really like it. It's a nice fine line. And I'm just going to mark my 2 dark color squares. Doesn't really matter if you use your darker fabric or your lighter fabric if you have the right pen, but if I were doing this on my lighter color fabric, I would use a lighter hand, of course, so it doesn't show through, and probably a lead pencil. So I am going to sew right on those lines. I'll be right back because I have to change my thread color. Okay, so I changed my thread color and went ahead and sewed these lines, or sewed the lines that I drew. And I'm going to go ahead and trim these in half, just like so. And we're going to do this on both sets. Now, she doesn't tell us which way to press, but I'm going to press towards the dark. And if you've watched any of my videos, you already know that I finger press first, especially when I am on a bias like this because it stretches so bad. So the next thing we do with our hourglass is we are going to lay this seam against this seam, just like so. Now you can do corner to corner, but it's actually best if you can match the seams and you can feel it. Okay, and if you're not sure, fold it back and look. So those seams should be nested together. And then we'll draw another line. I'm going to need a pencil for this. So I'm again going to draw corner to corner. On the light color, and on the dark color I'll use my white pen. I'm ambidextrous only for doing this, not anything else. All right, so I'm going to sew right on those two lines. And this is how you make an hourglass. So if you notice, we didn't trim our first half square triangle because we will be trimming it now. So on both sides. And we'll cut this in half. All right, and see what we have. Is that awesome or what? I'm going to get my little 4-patch here. You guys have seen me do this before. I just split that seam. One's going to go one way, the other's going to go the other way. And I still finger press as best I can. I try not to stretch it. And I'm going to press over here with my iron. And this is where the Tucker trimmer comes into play. The Tucker trimmer is awesome for this, and I'll show you why. So with my Tucker trimmer, we are to square our hourglass to 4.5 inches. So I find my 1/2 inch. So remember, if you're right-handed, your half circle is going to be in the top right-hand corner. If you're left-handed, the half circle will be in the top left-hand corner. Okay, I'm right-handed, so we'll work with that. I'm going to trim to 4.5 here. I don't know if I can zoom in a little bit. I'm going to trim to my 4.5 inch here. And this line here is going to go down the seam line. Here's my 4.5 inch line coming this way. So here we are. I almost lost it. I'm going to lay this solid line. This solid line is going to go down one seam, and the 4.5 inch dotted line will go down another seam. And if you notice, it will meet right where it needs to meet, right in the center here. If I were using this ruler, I would have to find half of 4.5, which is 2 1/4, which is right there where there's no line. And that will be the middle center pivot point right there. So you can see why this makes it a lot easier. There's just a line right there. It intersects. So I got my, and she's very generous in her cutting instructions. So here's my 4.5 inch line and my solid line. And they cross right here at the intersection. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this side. And the top. If I were left-handed, like I said, my half circle would be in the top left-hand corner, and I would have trimmed like this, up the left hand and over the top. You turn it around to your good corner down here if you're right-handed, down here if you're left-handed. So bottom left corner and my half circle up in the corner and my 4.5 inch dotted line right here on the good side that I just trimmed. And you have all sorts of places to match. You've got your dotted line, your solid line. This is slightly off here. I'm just going to persuade it and hold it down. And this is how you make an hourglass unit. So I have a perfect 4.5 inch hourglass unit. And that's how you do it. I don't know why my camera keeps shutting off. So I have this sewn to this to this, and next up are these. Back down, make sure you line it up correctly. I gotta give it a quick press. I can only stand it so long. Okay. And then this is supposed to square up to 4.5. So we'll check it when I'm done with it here. Like I said, the log cabin is so easy. You do have to have your 1/4 inch seam allowance pretty perfect though. So let's see how I did. Should be 4.5 inches. If I lay it down on my 4.5, I'm pretty darn close. There's a little bit of gap there, but I think I can deal with it. I can even zoom in. See the little tiny gap I'm talking about right there? Not too bad. It meets up here, so I'll just work with it. So if you have a problem with that, I would say try to take a smaller seam allowance if yours is too small. If it's too big, no problem. You can trim it down to 4.5. So mine came out pretty darn close. I'm happy with it. I'm taking it. Okay, the next unit we're going to be making is the square and a square unit. And for this, we will be using fabric 6 square in the middle and adding fabric 1 to the corners. Now, if you followed my cutting directions, and I've made this twice now, and for some reason didn't notice it. So these cutting directions, if you have them, page 7 on fabric 1 says cut 3 1/4. You will need to cut 3 3/4 of this fabric 1. I apologize for the error, but if you did cut the 3 1/4, you should have plenty of fabric left over to cut another 3 3/4 inch square. I know I did, and I cut my fabric exactly to the yardage requirements, and I've got scads of fabric left. So this is my 3 1/4 inch. We'll put it in a scrap quilt somewhere. So for the square in a square unit, I like to use the Tucker tool square in a square, squared tool. So this is a pretty neat tool. Our middle square is going to be, our directions tell us to cut that at 3 3/8, a fussy cut for you guys. I didn't fussy cut mine because it doesn't make sense to. If you're using Deb Tucker's tool like I am, the Studio 180 squared tool, you'll want to put this center square right here where it says center square. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. It says center square. Oh, get that glare. That's just terrible. Right there. Center. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm so sorry. There we go. Center square for 4-inch blocks. So that's a finished block. Not a, we'll be trimming to 4.5, but once it's in the quilt, that means it's finished. So it'd be 4-inch. So just check your measurements. So I lay that down there. You know, it is just a hair bigger. So for me, I am going to trim it. You don't have to though. I mean, she had you cut it at, I think, 3 3 3/8. It's just that much bigger on this tool. So it'll come out fine. If you have a square and a square tool, or I know there's a version of Creative Grids for this too. You could try that as well. I just prefer Deb Tucker's. So here's my 3 3/4 corners for my square and a square. And I don't cut them in half until I am ready to use them. Because it kind of, they can kind of distort sitting around. So I'll cut it in half now. And basically, we're just going to sew these units. I'll zoom back down. Sew these units like this. And you can see that we have plenty of space. So when we get done sewing these together, we will trim it down to 4.5 inches. So I'm going to sew opposite sides first and then the other opposite sides next. And again, we'll just fast forward through me sewing, but some people like to watch me do that. So and I just eyeball the center. You know, I just try to have as much overhang in here as I do here. I don't measure. I know there's some people that will, and that's fine too. You know, this is so much bigger. I don't know. You might want to even try, see if your 3 1/4 would work. It seems like it's way bigger than it needs to be. I'll just look and see. You know, your 3 1/4 inch one might even, no, it'll probably be too small. Never mind. Go with 3 3/4. I'm pressing it real quick here. I like to press as I go. It just makes for a cleaner block. Okay. So there we have our square and a square. Now all we have to do is square it up. So I will take the square tool, and you can see here we're going to square it up to 4.5 inches, which is right here. So I'm going to lay my center block on the dotted 4-inch square right there. So see that dotted line right there? I will lay that. Let's see. I need to zoom back out. There we go. So you can see my 4-inch marks there, 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 and there. I just lay that on my square. And I will be trimming around. And so you can see I have plenty of room to trim. So I'm trimming quite a bit off. You can see it leaves a 1/4 inch seam at the corners. So whatever tool you have, I know there's a couple of them, but if you have a square square up tool, this is where you would want to use it. So I'm just going to line up my 4.5 inch lines here and here with the corner I just cleaned up. And that should also match here, here, and here, which it does. And I will have a perfect square and a square unit. Is that cool or what? There it is. Now, to finish out our block, all we do is put it all together. So I'll get my pattern out here again. I'm looking at this block called Staffordshire, and we will lay it out. So let's see if I can go back out as far as I can here. And like so. That. So make sure you orientate these in the correct order. So now it looks like we have another square and a square. And we want to put that there. It's interesting with the different fabrics, isn't it? I'm having fun doing it out of something different. And so there, I'll sew those together and we'll be done with our block. I love to use my stiletto here just to keep the seams laying down and keep it straight. I pressed to the outside on the middle because this is such a thick seam here that I didn't want to have to fold that back. So I'm pressing to the outside on the middle row, and I'll press to the inside on the top and bottom row. Okay, I have them lined up. Stand back, take a look at it, and sew them together. And so notice that I sewed this seam facing that way and pressed that seam facing that way, so they will nest here like so. So the thicknesses will go in opposite directions. I don't know if you can see that or not. See that what I mean?